Cominciata la partita? Adesso? Perfetto.
The North Code. The North Code.
With any Mercato brings the best hopes and dreams at the start, yet somewhere through this roller coaster ride for any Laziale, it kind of leaves you with the end of a disappointment, pessimistic outlook, and boatloads of frustration. Lazio land moderator and overall English-speaking Lazio fans ambassador Cathal Caxi-Mullen joins us as usual for the North Curve. Is this lead-in a fair estimate into the state of affairs that we find ourselves today after the Mercato?
I think so, Michael. I think it's a year after year thing at this stage, isn't it, really, that we find ourselves in this position where we're talking about disappointments in the market very much so. I mean, it started optimistic this time, definitely getting some signings in early, but always it comes down to what happens in the end, or at least that's what's going to be left in our minds. And it's certainly left a bitter taste in the mouth with the whole Yilmaz affair. And that's all anyone's going to remember from this Mercato.
And speaking on the big flop, I guess, signing, I'm just upset, actually, if you think about it, because year after year, not only do we not make the signings we want, but then we lament them afterwards when it's almost too little too late. Like, I don't know. Usually when it's a club dealing thing, you keep that stuff close to the chest. Lotito's come out and kind of said, well, we weren't going to sign Yilmaz, but then he was offered to us, so we took a run at him, and then we didn't sign him, and then we wanted Quagliarella, but that didn't happen either because Conte blocked it. So it's kind of an airing of dirty laundry, and it kind of outlines a reason why people don't really want to do business with Lazio sometimes, because you're throwing everybody, including Genoa, Roma, and all the teams that were included in that triangle for Gilardino and Quagliarella going the other way under the bus. So, I mean, we didn't get Yilmaz, we didn't get Quagliarella, we stood pat on not bringing in another striker, and we haven't got another defender. I mean, it's a good reason to feel frustrated, no matter with the fact that I know me and you both weren't really hot on the idea of shelling out 15 plus million on a guy like Yilmaz, who's already 28 and only really dominated the Turkish league in the last 2 seasons. But something had to have happened, and it didn't.
Yeah, for me, it's quite clear where I stand with this. I mean, yeah, you're right. We discussed this, in private together, and we discussed how useful Yilmaz would really be. But the point is everything was hinged on Yilmaz in the end. And I believe Lotito. I looking at all the comments that are out there, it does genuinely seem as if we had a deal for Yilmaz, which was 13 million plus a 2 million bonus that hinged on qualifying for the Champions League, and it does seem that his agent turned around and asked for an extra 2 million. But what I can't understand, Michael, is that's 15 million going straight towards a transfer for Yilmaz. Lotito said that he was willing to put 2.5 million per year into his salary, a 5-year deal. That's another 12.5 million, and there's probably bonuses in that. You're talking 30 million euro package for this one player that the whole market hinged on. And then I don't care how immoral it is, but if the agent did turn around and ask for an extra 2 million more, it's a fraction of what we were willing to pay in the first place. I mean, it's a lot of money for the club. I'm sure it's a lot of money for Lotito, and for me and you, it's probably a sizable figure. But I mean, when we're talking about a 30 million in total deal, I mean, to throw the whole deal away, to cancel the whole deal over 2 million, doesn't make sense. It's illogical, and it puts us in a situation where it could be the difference between us qualifying for Europe next year and not doing so. I'm not saying Yilmaz is a difference, but to many of us, and many fans, he could make the difference. He might be the difference between qualifying for Europe and not. And at the end of the day, that's going to recuperate more than 2 million euros. So I don't really understand why we haven't gone through with this. And I think that's where the frustration lies for me. I'm not sure if that's the general frustration. I think just failing to sign the player is frustrating enough for most. But for me, it's 2 million in the general scheme of things and in the way we were doing business and in this transaction. It's not a lot of money, and the consequences are huge now,
And
and,
and
and the
that's a
team
great point. Yeah, what's the consequences now, and where do we go from here with really two technical strikers really on the team now? I mean, we know Klose is eventually going to get hurt. Flokody seems like a shadow of himself from years past. That he's really timid on the ball many times, that he's gotten the chance, and now we've given away Kozak as well, who I'm not saying would have been the difference maker, but at least that was a guy that could pick up some goals at least in the Europa League going forward. So we've sold off guys, and we haven't brought anybody in key areas. And another one what will eventually segue into is defense, because obviously our defending is just not up to par with the rest of Serie A, which is a high demanding league when it comes to top defenders.
Yeah, I think I can understand where we started out with this Mercato. Definitely, if you look at our defence over the last 2 to 3 years, it's been solid. And where we really seem to struggle, looking purely on statistics, we do seem to struggle in front of goal. Now, whether that's a creativity problem or simple putting the ball into the back of the net, I'm not quite sure. I always think, creativity is the main issue, but we certainly addressed that. I think that's where we started with this market, but can't rely on the defenders that we have, and we can't rely on the strike force that we have simply because Biava, Diaz, Klose, Flockery, they're all well into their 30s at this stage. And I mean, in Italy, you'll get away with that, but not when you're playing 3 different competitions in a season. We're not going to get away with that, and certainly we're very limited in terms of what we can do if it all starts to go wrong in either department. And I think the real fear with this whole market is that we've left ourselves in a situation where if anything does go wrong, and it has over the last few seasons, we've seen that from January onwards, then we're in trouble. And I don't think it's good enough to sit here and hope that we can last to January. I mean, no serious club plans their market out until January. I mean, you plan it out for the whole year or 2, 3, 4 years down the line. So, yeah, there's just a lot of variables at this moment in time that strike fear in me, really.
Usually at the end of a Mercato, you have a kind of idea of where the club's going, but from what I'm hearing from you, there really isn't a solid plan, and that's not like Tade and Lotito, at least in that sense. Usually they get what they want, or they have their certain targets that they try to hit off and check off through the Mercato, but we have a Primavera squad that continues to place in the finals and then win the whole Scudetto or the league championship of the Primavera players. Yet we haven't really seen anybody get promoted to the senior team either. But at the same token, we're bringing in free agents like Vicinius from Brazil, who all of a sudden is going to get called most likely into action now with Radu going down for 2 months, who had been going on a great streak of no injuries. And now it's back to the same old story. So injuries, not enough moves in the transfer market, and not in the right places. Exactly, like you said, it leaves all these question marks. What is the future? And if you can prognosticate any sort of future from now until January, what is it that you foresee?
I would be very worried about the coming season. I have been all summer, actually, even when things were looking positive when we added Belia and Felipe Anderson after a long pursuit there. I've been worried the whole summer, and my reason for that is I sort of feel like, as you say, there is no plan, and generally you don't really see much forward planning with Lotito or Tari anyway. But this year it just looks so disorganized. It's almost unbelievable. Sure, I think we've lacked creativity, and I think we've tried to address that. But when you've got a tight knit bunch like we have, and when we've had trouble performing in the last 4 or 5 months of the previous season, we didn't really have the injury crisis. And Lotito's mentioned this in the press. We didn't really have the injury crisis last season that we had in the seasons where Eddie Rea was in charge. And for me, when you have this tight-knit group, you have to go out and buy 1 or 2 quality players that can just walk into the first 11 and just drag the whole level of the team up. And so then you relegate a couple of the first teamers to the bench, and the quality, you can see the actual improvement in quality, but I don't see that this time around. Now, if we went out and bought Yilmaz and suddenly he walked into the team and immediately put Klose on the bench, then we wouldn't be having this debate, That's where I feel the whole management has gone wrong this season. It's like we're adding players that we like for the sake of adding players that we like. And we've spent a lot of money when you look at it. We've
Yeah, we've spent
recuperated
more
some of
money
that.
than we ever have before.
Yeah, and that's the worry. I don't see the difference in quality. Pekovic is going to pretty much go with the same 11 week in, week out. You can expect the same injuries given the age of our key players. And, okay, the guys we've got to step in. I mean, there might be a slight improvement there, but Belia is not coming in for Biava or Diaz or Klose. They're not the players he's going to come in and replace unless Petkovic does something wild with his tactics. So I don't see how we can improve on what we did last year in the league. Okay, we went on a run in Europe and we had the Coppa Italia to think about, but they're not excuses for me. I don't think fatigue was a massive issue. Europa League, we played a different team in the Europa League than we did in the league. We did change personnel there, and when it came to the Coppa Italia, we had only one game to think about after January, pretty much. So I don't buy into these excuses. We needed to go out there, add a couple of faces, keep the unity within the team, but add to the quality of the team. Now I fear what we've done is we've added so much new elements that are unproven and untried, and we don't really know what to expect. I think we're in danger of losing that unity within the team. And more worryingly down the line, and what I sort of fear most, is that this could lead to departures that we really cannot afford to see. Maybe not in January, but possibly in the summer. Hernandez doesn't look too settled to me at the minute. And there's other big names really within our team that could move on to a team that's challenging for honours and Champions League places year in, year out. I don't feel we're there, and that's the real worry. It's not so much from now to January, it's the entire season and beyond that we just haven't added enough quality to keep the momentum going to actually move forward.
You were big on selling Hernandez throughout the course of the summer. Is that something that you see now with the unsettlement with the rumors? Is that something that should have been done and that business should have taken place this summer?
I think Hernandez is a pretty loyal guy, and I think, I don't think he wants to leave as such, but I think he understands that he's in his peak condition now, and that if ever he's going to achieve something in the game, it's now. And I don't really think he's going to hang around at Lazio if we struggle to make Europe. Whether we fail to qualify for Europa League or whether we just about get in, he wants to be playing Champions League football. At the minute, I don't think it's really a big concern for him, and this is why I've been quite vociferous about this. Lazio is currently putting him in the Brazil side for the World Cup next year. While we're putting him in the side, I don't think he's too worried about remaining here for another season. Next season, technically, he could probably leave under Article 17 or something like that. I know 99% sure he wouldn't do that to us. He's a pretty loyal guy. He loves the city, he loves the club. But his value next summer is greatly decreased no matter how he plays this season, in my opinion.
Unless he has a fantastic World Cup tournament.
Well, yeah, but then he's only got 1 year to run on his contract. So, yeah, I still think we'd get a lot of money for him because clubs are nowadays paying a lot of money for people who have very limited time to run just to beat the competition. I still think you'd probably easily get 15 million for him, but that's only if these valuations of 25, 30 million are actually accurate. If they're not, then he's going to go for very little if he wants to go. And that's the problem. This club have a policy. If you don't want to be here, you go. And if he doesn't want to be here next summer, he's going to go to the highest bidder. And that's the problem. When he goes, where are we? And that's why I would have seriously considered selling him this summer. Whether the bids were there or not, I don't know. I think it was something we had to think about. We either had to revolutionise the team and make drastic changes, much like Napoli and Fiorentina have by selling their best players, or we needed to keep the group together and just add that little bit of quality that's going to keep the likes of Hernandez, Marchetti, the players are going to keep them there by improving us in the league table. I don't see that improvement now, and that's going to cause problems in the future. And I think the first person you could put at the top of that list is Hernandez.
You've outlined some pretty dreary and drastic conditions that we've echoed in terms of our concern going forward. Is there really any positives from here on end? Are we going to continue to beat the teams we're supposed to beat, at least technically on paper, and continue to lose out to the clubs striving towards Champions League football? As we've seen, we've already conceded 8 goals to Juventus. We got the Derby coming up. Personally speaking, I don't think Roma's really strengthened their team as much without spending too much time talking on them. But, I mean, they're not really the team in my sights of the type of teams that we need to be beating. Obviously, you mentioned Napoli and Fiorentina, 2 teams that have drastically changed the outlook of their squads. Where do we fit in this, and is there any positives going forward?
I think where we fit in this is I don't think we're that much more competitive than what we were last season. What happened last season is Inter and Roma really struggled, and Fiorentina raised their game considerably and managed to get into Europe. And Udinese did what they did for the last few seasons and surprised everyone by nabbing a spot in Europe again. So, teams fall away and other teams seem to come into the fold. I don't really see too many teams improving this season on the positions they had last season. I think the league will remain much the same. Maybe Fiorentina will suffer without Jovetic. Maybe Napoli will suffer without Cavani. But I'm not sure we have added enough quality in our team to actually overtake either of those two sides. And that's the worry for me. But the positives we can take from it is that we still have the same group, and we've added a few new faces. We've added some youth. Maybe they can, give a kick up the backside of some more established players and maybe add some enthusiasm that pushes some of our more experienced players on. I wouldn't be, writing this off completely yet. I would just fear that maybe we're not competitive enough to actually qualify for Europe next season. We have to realise that we didn't manage to do it through the league last season, and we're going to be playing in Europe. It's going to take some toll on us, and we have the Coppa Italia to try and defend. We can't exactly just throw that competition. We have to try and defend the title with honour. So I just think it's a big ask for us to qualify for Europe next season unless Roma still struggle, unless Inter still struggle, although I've seen them and they look quite dangerous at this early stage. I think we're relying again on some of the more established clubs to fall by the wayside.
And that's just the age-old adage, to summarize, basically getting lucky with some of these new buys where technically unheard of names. We really don't know too much about Felipe Anderson. He comes with a high resume of good references, and Biglia as well, who's played in the Champions League. So that's great. Unfortunately, he's taking away a spot from a very loyal guy in Ledesma, and that, like you said, could cause that unbalance going forward, which is more worrying signs, not necessarily positive signs. And now all of a sudden we've left Diaz off our European list for the Europa League. He looked in a lot better shape, and I'm really disappointed with what I've seen so far from him this summer. I thought really he was going to make a real run for it. I know it was very unlikely that he was ever going to make the Brazilian national team to even get on that sheet, but I thought the whole fact of him trying to stay in good shape and giving it one last go of it was a sign of positive things to come. But unfortunately, the early signs and early stages of a team like Lazio that usually start pretty well are all the opposites this year. And what can you leave us with going forward? And is everybody across the forms rightful in their panic buttons?
At the end of the day, 2 of the 3 games we've played have been against Juventus, and the other game was against Udinese, who beat us last season. So, I mean, it's not like we have a divine right to be seriously competitive in these games and to beat these sides easily. And as Pekovic admitted himself, for 60 minutes against Udinese, we were actually very, very good and showed the type of form that thinks will be okay this season. But I think it depends why people are hitting the panic buttons. If people are hitting the panic buttons because they think we're genuinely going to struggle to stay in the league this season, then, that's taking it a bit far. But if people really expect us to challenge for Europe season in, season out, then I think
but shouldn't they be rightfully just in doing that? Shouldn't we be challenging for Europe year in and year out?
I think we should be challenging, Michael. I don't think we have any right to be doing more than challenging. I think anything we've overachieved slightly in recent years. I mean, with the TV rights package now and the budgets of the bigger clubs and some foreign investment, I mean, there's a good 5 to 6 clubs in this division who just simply have more money than us, and just to even be able to contend with them is a good achievement on the part of the club, and we've been doing that for the last 2 to 3 seasons. The danger is that this is a make or break season. I think there's more. You can see a pattern developing in the league. You can see certain teams now don't look like they're going to fall out of the European spots. Okay, Inter did last season, but I wouldn't say Milan or Napoli really look like going to fall too far from where they ended up last season. And I think Juventus could be shoo-ins for the Scudetto for the next 10, 15 years. It's going to be something very drastic going to happen to dethrone them now that they have their own stadium and they're generating more revenue than some other of the other big clubs. Like that's the problem we face. We're having to try and punch above our weight. It's almost like we become the biggest of the small clubs and the smallest of the big clubs, and it's a unique position and it's a challenge that we should relish. But the fear is that we will end up falling more into the category of the small clubs than with the big clubs, and I think that's where panic buttons are being hit. When you see Juventus coming out twice in the next space of 3 or 4 weeks and just pummeling us, that's a concern. That is an accurate reflection at this moment of time of how far we are away from the top of the league. And if you consider in December people were talking about us challenging Juventus for the Scudetto, it tells its own story, Michael.
It's a dreary outlook, and one that I would like to not close the show off with, but one that we really have to come to terms with. Panic buttons across the city of Rome, and although I don't really accept the fact that we should be considered one of the bigger of the smaller clubs, we are in a different state of our own. And I'm being told in Rome there's a lot of unsettlement, a lot of just unsettlement, and a lot of some unjust unsettlement in terms of where we're headed. And as we look forward to January, hopefully, when we probably will discuss this again, hopefully it'll be a totally different outlook. But chances are the only way Lazio remain in the top 10, I'd say, from now until January is if we get lucky with some of these new buys. Cathal, thanks again, man, for joining us, and hopefully keeping it lively as always on the forum. What do we have to look forward to in the Lazio Land community upcoming?
Well, hopefully, Michael, we won't have to look forward to too much dreariness. That would be a good start. But no, we're definitely working on pushing through some new features over the coming year. There's kind of a new enthusiasm within the team and within the forum. I think plenty of new registrations to the forum recently, new members. I feel like there's a new generation coming through. So that might sound a bit cliched, but it's good to see so many new faces coming on the forum. It's a sign of us gaining in recognition all the time. So hopefully we can have a very vibrant season, no matter what happens with results, and maybe push through some interesting features throughout the season.
Hoping to stay competitive on all fronts in the communities and as ambassadors like you and myself. Also, here in Canada, we'll tentatively be booking the September 28th edition of the Supporters Derby, where we get to express our Lazialità here in our community. So if you haven't already joined the Lazio Club Canada forum, you can always drop us a line through the Lazio Land forums, and there's Canadians in and across, and North Americans in general in and across all the forums. So get in and get at us as well. And we'll, I guess, see you again in January.
Yeah, January. I just hope we're looking at it from a more positive perspective. But yeah, I don't think it's really we should be too doom and gloom about it. I think we just have to hope that what we have is as good as it can be, as good as we know it can be, and hopefully we'll be looking in on January with more optimism.
Trying to stay competitive and as chipper as always. Forza Lazio, my friend.
Forza Lazio, Michael. Thank you very much.